Relations and functions. Our objective is to identify functions as well as find the domain and range of relations and functions. Why learn this? You can use a relation to show finishing positions and scores on a track meet. Let's look at some vocabulary. A relation is a set of ordered pairs. So right below is a set of ordered pairs. And to claim that it's a set, we make sure we put them in braces. The domain is simply all the x values of a relation. So when you look at your x values, that's 2, 5, and negative 3. The set of your x values is 2, 5, and negative 3. And since it's a set of numbers that are all under one ideal, that's the domain, so we want to make sure we put them as a set, so put them in braces. And the range is simply all the y values, so 3, negative 1, and 0. A function is a special type of relation that pairs each domain value with exactly one range value. Let's start with showing multiple representations for a relation. Express the relation for the track meet scoring system as a table, as a graph, and as a mapping diagram. So this first one we're just kind of going to look at together. So as a table, you're going to place all your x values in the first column and then all your y values in the second. Making sure that your 1 corresponds with your 5 since the coordinate, the 1 and the 5, correspond with each other. When you're graphing, simply plot each point. And now for the mapping diagram. A mapping diagram is very similar to a table, only it uses arrows to show which points go with what. So you have 1 goes with the 5, so your x values are in this first one, your y values are in the second one, or domain and range, and the arrow will show how they are connected, or which numbers they are connected to. So the 2 and the 3 are connected to each other. How about you try one? So try this example. Express the relation as a table, as a graph, and as a mapping diagram. When you unpause the video, the answer will be revealed. And the relation is now expressed as a table, a mapping diagram, and a graph. Let's continue. Find the domain and range of a relation. We know that the domain are all the x values, and the range is all of the y values. So let's start with domain. In the graph, your domain is going to be all your x values, so we're going to need to look at the x-axis. So when we look at the graph, it starts at 1 and it ends at 3. It includes both of those points, since it's a filled-in circle and a solid line. Therefore, your domain is going to be between 1 and 4, or 1 and 3, and it includes 1 and 3. Alright, so now let's look at the range values. Your range values are your y values, so you're going to look at the y-axis. And the graph goes between your 2 and your 4, and includes the 2 and the 4. So therefore your range is going to be 2 is less than or equal to y, which is less than or equal to 4. Mapping diagrams and tables are often a little bit easier, because they're already almost set up the way you need them. All your x values are on the left in a mapping diagram, and your domain is simply all your x values. So put them in a list. And then since they're a set, make sure you put braces around them. Your range is all your y values, so you simply need to put those in a list. And C. Very similar to your mapping diagram, you have your x values, your y values, so your domain and your range, and your domain is going to be your 1, 4, and 8. And then your range is going to be 1 and 4. Notice how it's not 1, 4, 1. If the number repeats, you only write it once. Let's take it up a step. So we're going to identify functions. So give the domain and range for each relation, and then tell whether the relation is a function. So if we recall back to the definition of a function, it is a special type of relation that pairs each domain value with exactly one range value. So you have your x values, your domain values, and then you have your y values. So let's separate our domain and our range. So we have our 3 domain values and our 2 range values. It is a function because each of your domains only match with one y value. 75 students doesn't give you 2 different numbers or amounts for buses. 75 students is 2 buses. Let's try this next one. Use the arrows to determine which values correspond to each range value. So we have 7, 9, 12, and 15. Those are the domain values. And then you have your range values, which are -7, -1, and 0. Well, our 9, 12, and 15 all only match with one value. However, our 7 matches with 2 values, which means when we input a 7, we're going to get an output of 2 different answers. So therefore, it is not a function. Another way to test this is using the vertical line test. On the left, we have a function. No matter where you draw a vertical line, you will only hit the graph one time. However, in the one on the right, it is not a function, because where you draw a line, if it happens at least once, then it means it's not a function. So say we draw a line at x equals 2. When you insert x for 2, when you insert 2 for x, you end up with 2 different values, which makes this not a function. So try using the vertical line test on this one. If we draw a vertical line, we're going to hit at least 2 points at least once. So therefore, this is not a function. And with that being said, that also ends our lesson on relations and functions.